we're going to talk about the adrenal gland and kind of how that is regulated. And I want to point out it's regulated in a couple of different ways. So we're going to focus specifically on its hormonal regulation. There is regulation of the adrenal glands from the sympathetic nervous system. You can watch my sympathetic nervous system video to see how those are regulated. Today we're going to talk about how it's regulated from the endocrine side of things. Okay, so let's get started here. At the beginning, right, so for almost every hormonal process, not all, but most of our processes are going to start up at the hypothalamus. So my hypothalamus is going to release CRH, okay, because it's a releasing hormone. This is going to stimulate my pituitary gland, specifically to release ACTH. And then ACTH is going to go down to my adrenal gland to tell us to secrete our adrenal hormones. Okay, so notably, we're going to release cortisol, we're going to release aldosterone, we're going to release testosterone, we're going to release norepinephrine, and epinephrine. Okay, and so these are going to all bring up things in what we would typically think of for stress responses. We're going to do these in a number of different ways, right? And this is why I say that it does kind of have some sympathetic involved, but this is for longer term things. This is for things that we want to last, not just for, I realize I'm running from something, right? Or I have to climb a really high flight of stairs. This is for, I have a sustained need for these hormones, right? So cortisol, right? If we think about cortisol, we actually use cortisol to wake up in the morning, right? It's going to play a large role in that arousal, okay? It's going to keep us conscious. It's going to give you that feeling of the stress. Another key thing that cortisol is going to do is it's going to increase our blood sugar. Okay, so it's going to function alongside, similar to glucagon, so it's going to stimulate the breakdown of glycogen and the release of that blood sugar so that it's available for the rest of my body, right? So you'll hear people say, oh, your cortisol is going to be high in the morning if you do XYZ. Your cortisol is going to be high just by you waking up in the morning. And that's natural, and that's what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to mobilize our blood sugars. We are supposed to have a spike in blood sugar to keep us going in the morning. Okay, it's not a bad thing. Aldosterone is going to bring up my blood pressure. Okay, the way it does that is by increasing water retention. With salt. And we'll talk more deeply about how aldosterone works when we talk about the kidneys. Okay, testosterone is going to do things like activate muscle tone, and a number of other things. But when we're thinking about stress responses and I'm going to use my muscles, I need testosterone to stimulate that. Okay, but it's going to do other things, right? Like hair growth and bone health and all sorts of things. But if we're thinking about, like, I'm releasing this in the morning for a function, we're going to also release norepinephrine and epinephrine, right? And those are the ones that we usually refer to these as adrenaline. Okay. But they're going to have different functions. And they're not too different from one another because they can bind to similar receptors. So their receptors are not going to be just sensitive to norepinephrine or just sensitive to epinephrine. They're just going to have a preference for the most part. There are some exceptions to the rule, but you can bind both in a pinch. Okay. So norepinephrine, it's going to, what I think it does, what I like to think of a lot of what it does, is it's going to increase my vascular, the vascular constriction, or we're going to increase vasoconstriction, which is going to bring up my blood pressure, It's going to do things like increase heart rate. It's going to increase heart contractility. And then if we're thinking about epinephrine, it can do a lot of these things as well, but not as efficiently. One thing that's really efficient with is opening up my bronchus. So it's opening up airways. And that is why when somebody is going through anaphylactic shock, they receive a shot of epinephrine because their lungs are constricting and closing so they can't breathe. But epinephrine is opening up those, can open up those airways so that they can get to the hospital and get treated, right? So when somebody receives an EpiPen, they don't just give themselves a shot of Epi and don't do anything about it. It is recommended to then go to the hospital and make sure that everything is okay. Which I hope everything is okay with you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.